Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the podcast today, we have Jane Rogers and Jake Morgan. Jane, would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me. So I'm a parent coach, which means that I work with parents who have some concern or difficulty around some aspect of their child's behaviour. So just to give you a few examples, at the extreme end, I quite often have parents approach me because their child is having a lot of angry meltdowns, either from time to time or even on a daily basis, and parents just can't work out what's going on. Parents also ask me about all the usual things like sibling rivalry, children that won't go to bed, toddler tantrums, and children that just won't listen. So yeah, I have a 6-week coaching program that I do with parents, and I'm also at the moment doing a free masterclass. Apparently they're masterclasses now, not workshops. They used to be workshops. A free masterclass on how to help your angry child. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and yeah, I should probably say that I also write books for children, and I'm particularly interested in supporting children's emotional literacy and getting them to talk about their feelings. And I've written a couple of books, which I think I'm going to be reading from today.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Intro.
No, I think there's some really interesting and important things to discuss there. So I won't talk too much. I have a habit of doing so. So I'll just let you get on.
So do I.
There's some really interesting things.
We'll be battling.
I'll try and sit back. You're the expert.
I thought a good way to start would be, let's say you encountered someone and they're like, oh my goodness, I so need your help. I've got a little one or maybe a not so little one, and they're prone to anger or meltdowns. Please, can you help me? What would you say?
Okay, so first of all, I'd ask them if they like to work with me, because if they've got an ongoing problem, then that's not something that can be sorted out, in just one session. So yeah, ongoing anger and meltdowns is quite a common one. So I always start with a session around trying to understand the reasons for that behaviour. So I usually say to parents, I come across a lot of different reasons why children behave in that difficult manner, but you're the parent and you know your child best. So we put our heads together in that first session and we will try and work out what the reasons are for the difficult behaviour. And sometimes it becomes fairly obvious, and sometimes we're still sort of clutching at straws, but that's like the first thing that I will always do is we need to sit down and talk about what the possible reasons are for this behaviour, because then if you've got a bit of an idea of what the reasons are, then that's helps you with the way forward and what to do about it.
Do you find that a little bit difficult to diagnose? Because I might be looking at it through my own lens, but I would anticipate that there's some sort of deeper, meaningful reason as to why a child would be extremely upset and melting down. But I would say most parents' approach to it would be like, well, I just asked them to brush their teeth and they didn't want to do it, and then they started screaming.
Yeah. So I read an article. I wrote an article, a few years ago actually, called "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff," and it was because a parent had said this to me. I'd done a parenting course, and he had said, with that particular example, we say don't sweat the small stuff as adults, don't we? But children really do sweat the small stuff. So you've asked them to clean your teeth, or you've given them a biscuit and the biscuit is broken, or you've asked them to sort of tidy up one toy or something. And children really do sweat the small stuff. But there are so many different reasons why children behave like that. And in that first session that I do with parents, we always look at children's needs and try and work out if there are any needs that are not being met. Because when parents have a little baby, I mean, you'll both remember this, I do even, and the baby's crying, and that's the difficult, challenging behaviour. And the parents are going through a checklist, like, does the baby's nappy need changing? Is the baby tired? Is he hungry? Whatever it is, and ticking off all those. In theory, you meet the need. So the baby was hungry, you meet the need for that, you feed the baby, and the challenging behaviour goes away. I know it's not that easy with babies, but it's the same with a tired toddler. You can see, if a toddler has missed their nap and it's 4 o'clock and they're melting down, that's because of an unmet need. It becomes a lot more difficult once they're sort of primary school age. Why is my child still having meltdowns? Shouldn't they have grown out of this? So I've forgotten what your question was, but I hope that answered it.
I suppose it was, how do you determine the actual need versus the perceived need?
Yeah, so me and the parent will go through, a list of needs, and we'll work out if there are any of those particular needs that are perhaps not being fully met. And sometimes parents will identify quite quickly. They'll go like, time. Yeah, I've been so busy lately, and I just haven't had enough time for my child. And sometimes they'll go, well, yeah, I think we're meeting all those needs. But you have to remember that children especially school-age children, spend a lot of time at school. So they have all the same needs at school, and are those needs all being met? And basically someone said it, haven't they? All behaviour is communication, and you've got to try and work out what that behaviour is communicating. And it's not always easy.
No, it certainly isn't.
No, we've all learnt that as parents, haven't we?
Yeah, we certainly have, I'm sure. Thomas?
Well, I had a couple of questions. The first one was, how long do you think that activity goes on for? And I'm referencing the fact that Jake has teens, and I wondered whether that kind of it wouldn't manifest in a meltdown, I think, in the vast majority of cases, but I think probably attention-seeking behaviour probably still would. So what's your thoughts on that?
How long does it go on for?
That type of attention-seeking behaviour that really isn't, I might be annoyed because of like someone took my hairbrush or my sister took my hairbrush or something, but in reality it might be something completely a more meaningful reason as to why that they're getting upset.
Oh, I mean, how long does it go on for is, a pretty impossible question to answer. And if there's anyone out there who's thinking of becoming a parent, they might be thinking, oh my goodness, I know about toddler tantrums, but are they telling me that this behaviour goes on for, right up to teens? It depends so much on circumstances and on the individual circumstances of the family and the temperament of the child. I mean, some children are kind of highly sensitive, aren't they? And some children are live wires. Some children are really easygoing. If you've got a very easygoing child, you might not get any of this behaviour, to be honest. If you've got a highly sensitive child or an anxious child, or just one of kind of live wired kind of children, then it can continue sort of through the teenage years. I mean, Jake, you've got teenagers, haven't you? You're nodding.
I am nodding. Yeah. I have one.
Does this resonate with you?
It certainly does. Yeah, I've got one that's 15 and one that's 13, and the 15-year-old is quite chilled, quite easygoing, and the 13-year-old one is very creative, and with that comes a certain sensitivity, I think, which they both have their challenges. For example, the oldest one will keep herself pretty much to herself, so communication sometimes can be difficult because she won't tell you if she's upset. You won't necessarily even be aware that she's upset, whereas but of course she still has those feelings and she still gets upset. Whereas the younger one will let herself be known, let's just say.
Yeah. And in some ways, the older one is sort of a bit more difficult to deal with because she's not sort of letting you know what's going on. Yeah.
More frustrating because you don't have those reference points. So,
and as they get older, they're what, 13 and 15, are they?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that, well, I'm sure you have noticed that they don't really want to spend much time with their parents anymore. They want to spend time with their friends. They kind of visit you now and then, don't they, for food, but mainly they're up in their room.
That's right.
But I think, you know, what I'm going to say is relevant for every age, but, you know, start it when they're young, and then, you know, it'll reap the benefits when they're older. Just build a relationship with your children when they're young, and then when they're teens, you know, if you imagine a pair, say we've got two parents, and there's one parent who's built a really good, strong, positive connection with their child when they're young, and then they reach the teenage years, and, you know, there's a few difficulties along the way, but, you know, they manage them together. And then you've got another parent who hasn't built that strong, positive relationship with their child when they're young, and then they reach the teenage years. You know, it's kind of a bit obvious what I'm going to say, but yeah, you're right. You know, the communicating with your teen. I think, obviously I had teens not that long ago. I think the most important thing is to spend time with them. But how do you do that? Because they don't want to be with you.
Yes, that's right.
But have you found yourself being a parent taxi at all?
Well, no, not really, because of the lockdown. I think it's
COVID, yeah.
But otherwise, yes, I have done a bit of that. But,
so I remember
recently.
when, obviously, long before COVID, I spent a lot of time taxiing, especially my younger one, about. And normally they get in the car and they plug themselves in straight away.
Yeah.
But the trick is, before they've plugged themselves in, is to engage them in conversation. And just have those, I don't mean about deep, meaningful stuff, just have those, like I'd be taking my son to hockey. And I'm really not interested in hockey, but I would pretend to be. And I'd say, so how do you think your team's going to get on tonight? You know, where are you in the league and all that, you know, asking these sort of, just keep that connection going in any way that you can. My other son was really interested in, you know, the TV program Grand Designs. So we got him a subscription to the Grand Designs magazine, and it's just, you know, how do you get through to them when things are difficult? Well, you're much more likely to be able to have conversations with them when things are difficult if you've got that bond with them. And it's easy when they're little, becomes a lot more difficult when they're older, and, you know, their friends are more important. But just, you know, anytime you're being a parent taxi, or, you know, whatever your child's interested in. I mean, I thank God that neither of my boys were interested in football, because I really don't like football. But if they had been interested in football when they were older, I would have been on the touchline cheering them on. And then, you know, if you've got that good relationship with them, they're more likely to talk to you and open up.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
True. Wise words indeed.
Yeah.
I just thought, great mum. I said I wanted to mention something before we started recording, and it was about the book in the background there that I can see, the blue one.
Oh yeah, I've got it here. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic feelings.
The thing that I wanted to say, going on from what I said before, which was the fact that my eldest was a bit upset, to say the least, and she was very excited about your book. And I basically, when she was upset, I said, you know, would you like to go through the book, and we'll look at a particular. She got to choose basically which feeling it was that she was expressing. And the reason why I bring it up is because it went from me essentially trying to calm her down, or not trying, but normally I'm quite good at it, to us doing something together. So instead of me trying to resolve it, it actually was an activity that we were kind of, you know, doing just as we would if we were playing or something. And it was a different dynamic. So I thought it was important to reference it, and I thought it would be a segue into perhaps you wanting to share some of the book.
Absolutely, that's interesting. So the books that I've written, there are two, Fantastic Feelings and I'm Not Afraid of Spiders, and they're full of poems and activities, and they're all about feelings and emotions. So emotional literacy is so important to teach our children. So we don't really think as parents, we think we must teach them, you know, reading, writing, maths and all that, must teach them to cross the road, and we must teach them good manners and everything. But when do we ever think we must teach them about emotions and about talking about their emotions, and especially boys? Because it's on, you know, there's a lot of mental health stuff in the news, isn't there? And even this week there was an item on the BBC News about suicide being the major cause of death amongst young men, which is really, really sad. So when should you start talking to your children about feelings? Well, they're never too young to start. How should you do it? Well, you don't sit down and say, we're going to have a chat about feelings. You do it in, the way that you did, Thomas. You find something that's sort of engaging for your children. So that's the idea of my books, that it's a fun way to get children understanding and chatting about feelings. So I'm going to read you one of my favourite poems, which is called The Swimming Pool Slide, and that's from Fantastic Feelings. And in these books are for children of primary school age, I should say. And this poem, I think, shows how feelings can change really quickly from one to another, especially with children. And it also kind of addresses the topic of children's confidence as well. So here we go, The Swimming Pool Slide. Mum took me to the swimming pool today. She said, do you want to go down the slide? Yes, please, I said. But when I saw it, I thought it looked rather high. We waited for ages in the queue, but halfway up, I needed the loo. Oh dear, said Mum, that's a shame. I don't think we'll get our place again. But when we got back, the queue had gone. That's good, said Mum, come on. Wait, Mum. I'm scared. I've changed my mind. Oh, don't worry. You'll be fine. Sit down. I'll give you a push. And off I slid with a great big whoosh. Faster and faster, down and down, slipping and sliding round and round, into the pool with a great big splash. I'm under the water and up in a flash. I'm so proud of you, said Mum. Wow, I said. That was fun. So that gives you the opportunity to start a conversation about how that little girl felt when she saw the swimming pool slide. She was obviously nervous, scared, and how did she feel at the end of it? And it's also, when I'd read it back after I'd written it, I thought it was quite funny, because I realised that mum did something that I'm always telling parents not to do. So I'm always telling parents to acknowledge their child's feelings. If the child says they're scared, nervous, apprehensive, then they need to take a moment to acknowledge their child's feelings and let them talk about it. But she just goes, you'll be fine, I'll give you a push. Which is not normally what I tell parents to do. But what are your thoughts? I mean, Thomas, you've got a 3 and a 5-year-old. Would you have just gone, oh, don't worry, you'll be fine, and pushed them off?
No, I'm in the same boat as you, in the sense that if they express a preference, that's how I word it. They're expressing a preference, then you shouldn't dismiss their preferences. But for the, I totally recognise it's for the sake of the poem. It's a good way of expressing. By analogy, perhaps. But coming back to my experience with the books, one of the favourite parts that my little ones enjoyed was where it was kind of ask others when they felt, insert emotion here. And then it was like a little, now I have to ask mummy, and then I'll ask Beatrix about when she, and daddy, when did you feel X? And it was just, it was great.
And did she do that? And did it, lead to some interesting conversations? Yeah. And that's a really important point, because especially with the difficult feelings, so I work with a lot of parents who've got angry children, but it's really difficult to sit down with an angry child and talk about their anger, because they feel, they feel that they've been bad and they're being told off. So I always say to parents, don't make it, with the difficult feelings, don't make it all about the child. Talk about yourself as well. And that's why I've put a few activities in the book that's like exactly as you said. Go, have you ever felt angry, scared, excited, or whatever? Ask your family, have they ever felt? And I'm really glad that you did that, because it shows that there's a parent who's bought the book and is actually going out and doing the suggested things. Can you remember the feelings that you were talking about?
Well, we've done more than one, but what makes you angry was one of them, and it was difficult for both mum and myself because an anger for an adult hopefully would be a fairly rare thing. But we both kind of settled on when people are nasty to other people, that's something that makes us angry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And were your 5-year-old and your 3-year-old able to identify what makes them angry?
my 3-year-old probably said something like poo-poos or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in relation to the fact that she was upset, and we'd gone through the fact that she was feeling angry, and then that was what made her angry. We did the poem,
Yeah.
and then we did the activity.
Yeah, and that's always a good word to use, because behind anger there is always upset. So if you talk to your child, so parents say to me, what should I do after an angry incident? And I always say, have a chat about it when everyone's calm, and don't really use the word anger too much. Say something like, so when your brother trod on your Lego model, you were really upset, weren't you? And then you whacked him round the head, didn't you? But if you use the word upset, because that's what anger is, isn't it? It's distress and upset.
I just think it's frustration because you're unable to do the thing that you want to fix it.
Yeah.
So sort of manifests in anger.
Yeah, and one of the other points of these books is to teach children the words for their feelings. So you just used the word frustration, and some very young children might not understand that word. I'll just tell you a quick game that you can play with younger children to get them understanding more feelings words. Is grab a bit of paper and write down loads of feelings words and put some words on there. I mean, really young children tend to know happy, sad, excited, upset. They have a very small vocabulary. Slightly older children know a bit more, but put some words on that list that your children won't understand. I'm trying to think of some now, like apprehensive or elated, some words that they definitely wouldn't understand. Write all these words down, cut them all out, involve your kids in this. So you've got a load of like little strips of paper with a feelings word on, turn them all over, write a number on the back of them all, grab a dice, everyone take a turn, you throw the dice. So you throw a 4, you pick up the number 4. It's whatever the word is, you have to act out the word. So either the person who's picked it up can act out, it's like charades, you can act out that word, or they can choose someone to act out that word. And they have to read the word as well, and they might need some help with that. But the important thing is that you can get children talking about feelings like this in a really accessible way. Because if you can engage, we all know that children learn best when they're having fun and they're engaged with it. So if you can make it fun, your agenda is, I want my child to have good emotional literacy. I want them to learn about feelings, but they don't know that. They're just having fun.
Best way to learn. Yeah,
not with your
sure.
13 and 15-year-old, obviously, but maybe with your 3 and 5-year-old.
I don't know. I think even there could be a variation on that would work with teenagers as well.
Yeah, actually, there is. You could get Jenga, get a Jenga and write words, emotion words on the blocks, and think of as many complicated words as you can, and then when you pull out a block from the Jenga and you look at the word, maybe they don't all have words on, but when you look at the word, you have to act it out, or maybe the teenagers might be more interested in like telling someone else to act it out, or possibly explain a time when you have felt like that. There's use it as sort of seems fit for your own kids and their age.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think there's definitely sitting around the table. There's some interaction that can be going on that can make it into a fun game. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that you have been in this profession for a while, but the thing I'm interested in is how you learned this stuff. So where did your education come from?
Okay, I'll give you a quick potted history. I did an English degree. Didn't know before that I became a riding instructor, and then I did an English degree. Didn't know what the heck I wanted to do after that. First job that I got after university was working in a children's home. Back in the days when they used to have proper children's homes, and some really challenging behaviour, obviously, from children that had a really difficult start in life. And that made me realise how important childhood is, and made me feel very lucky that I'd had, a happy childhood. And then I worked in a nursery for a while, and then I had my own children, and I stayed at home for a while with my own children. Then I got a job working for social care with young people who'd been through the care system, so 16 to 18-year-olds who were getting ready to leave care. And it was so interesting because I'd worked with those young children in the children's home, sort of primary school age children, and seen all their difficulties and, their hang-ups and their behaviour. And then, right the other end, these 16 to 18-year-olds, they're, if you read their files, you can see what's happened to them, and that's just impacted on the rest of their lives. Then I was threatened with redundancy from that after, all the lovely government cuts a few years ago. So I sidestepped into a children's centre, worked with parents of under fives, and then sidestepped again into another role working with parents of primary school age children. So it was during those jobs that I got quite a lot of training, courtesy of my local authority, which I'm really grateful for. So they trained me in lots of different parenting programs. So that's where I got my sort of formal training. But then also being a mum, I've got two boys, being a mum and, mixing with other parents a lot when they were little. And I remember there was one of my friends had one of these really challenging children who was just a nightmare. He had meltdowns all the time. And back in the day then, I was in my early 30s then, God, it's a long time ago. I didn't know why he was behaving the way that he was, but that's a typical parent that comes to me now and, asks me for advice now. So yeah, some formal training through my jobs and just being a parent as well. And having worked for the last, 10 years or more with parents with difficult children. I mean, no one ever comes to me and said, oh, my child's really easy and great, I don't need your help. They come to me with problems, and over the years I've found out what works by testing it on real life parents. So yeah, it's really interesting job, and it's just a shame, I think, that this support isn't available to everyone, because it's a real postcode lottery as to what support parents get, where you live. Or you can go private if you can afford it, but it should be, I think it was David Cameron had the idea, didn't he, at one point, of letting all parents access parenting classes, but that it never got off the ground, did it? And the thing about that is that often parents think that it's only bad parents that need help. If they hear parenting course or parenting classes, they think, oh, that's not for the likes of me, that's for all these sort of social services type parents who haven't got a clue how to parent. But the parents that come to me are all really good parents, and I love working with them. They're good parents, but they're having some difficulties because there's no instruction book, there's no manual, and it's the most difficult job. It can be the most rewarding job in the world, but also it can be the most difficult job in the world as well.
Probably the most important job that anyone can do.
Definitely.
Because it's the formation of another human being, and it's a lifelong, as you said earlier on, if something, I guess it's a bit like compound interest in the way that a small little seed can grow into a big tree. So if there's a problem that's not addressed and the child isn't helped or can't overcome that particular issue, then it would just grow and become more of an issue that will affect them all their life. So
and we all know people, don't we, who are for want of a better phrase, sort of screwed up as adults, and often that is because of their childhood. So it's it just it kind of annoys me that childhood is not really seen as that important, and people who work in childcare are badly paid, and it's something that women do, and young girls who haven't got any qualifications working, and they do childcare. And sometimes the other thing also is because young women these days, like my son's sort of 25, 29, they're their contemporaries, women, you know, their peers, if you like, they wouldn't ever, I don't think there's many of them that would say, oh yeah, when I have children, I'm going to definitely stay at home for the first, you know, however many years, because it's the most important job in the world. You know, I'm going to take a massive big career break because this is going to be far more important than any career. Because they're kind of, you know,
it's gone too far the other way in society.
Yeah, it's sort of, and you know, it's not only women that can do a good job of looking after. It's just, I suppose what I'm trying to say is that, you know, childhood is not sort of revered as it should be. That's what I'd like. Yeah.
It's a shame. And I think it should be part of the curriculum at school as well. I mean, relationships in general and understanding relationships and part of, I mean, in my, if I were ever Prime Minister, and heaven forbid that ever happens, but I mean, I would like to have that as a sort of an important part of the school education.
Yeah, and that boys would study as well as girls, because you know, you get to, you know, you leave school when you're 16 or whatever, and you go off to college and you study childcare. You know, how many boys do that?
Yeah, well, when I was a parent, I realised at that point, I think when you take the baby home for the first time, because when you're, I mean, my wife had both of our children in a hospital, and you're surrounded by people who know what they're doing and midwives and all the rest of it. But as soon as you take your child home, suddenly it becomes very apparent that I've got no formation in this. I've no understanding, no idea. I'm a complete novice. I have no idea what to do with this human being here. And it's quite daunting.
Yeah, it can be people who've had no experience of children, or which I had experience of children, but very few people have had experience of babies. And I think I said to you, didn't I, a while ago, when I bought a puppy a couple of years ago, and when I took that puppy home from the breeders, I had a whole ton of information about how to look after that puppy. And when I took my 2 newborn babies home from hospital all those years ago, practically nothing, you know, a little goodie bag with a few bits and pieces in, and a visit the next day from the health visitor, and that was it. And is it the same now? I think you said there's not much has changed.
Well, it was like that for me. I don't know about you, Tom. You've gone through that very recently, I think, the third time. I think
it's better, I would say, but I still don't. I think you probably still got more education for your dog than I think is given for a baby.
Yeah, which is just, what's going on there? It's crazy. What is going on? Yeah, I don't
something
understand.
out of balance slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see it changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
So you mentioned that you do a free workshop. Can you let everyone know what that entails?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm offering a free workshop called How to Help Your Angry Child. So because I get so many parents who have difficulty with angry children. And basically it's quite a short session, just giving some information about how to help your angry child. So the first thing is children that have an angry meltdown, it's what's going on for that child and how to explain that to the child. So basically when someone has gone, you know, the red mist has descended and they're in a massive, you know, angry state, the fight or flight instinct has kicked in. And it's important that children understand that. And it's the same for anxious children, actually. The fight flight instinct kicks in, and I've got some really good child friendly YouTube videos that I show during that workshop that I aim for parents to show those to their children, which explains in sort of primary school aged sort of appropriateness what's going on for someone when they're angry and why they're just taken over by this, you know, gremlin thing. And I've got another really good clip that is children talking about what it's like to be angry. Because when you've got a child that gets angry a lot, it's really important that, you know, someone, either the parent or a counsellor or someone at school, addresses it with them so that they understand what's going on. Then we look at some of the possible reasons for anger, of which there are, you know, very many. And when I work sort of one-to-one with a parent, we can really get into what might be the possible reasons. Sometimes it's just like too much pressure. I mean, I think we forget that children are just like us. They're human beings just like us, and when we are under, you know, enormous amounts of stress and pressure, we are likely to show it, you know, in the way that we act. We might get angry or irritable or whatever. So yeah, looking at some possible reasons why children get angry. And then the last part of the workshop is looking at ways to help children calm down, to recognize that they're getting angry, and, you know, what can they do when they start feeling those feelings. So, you know, it all goes back to sort of teaching your child about emotions and recognizing really difficult emotions. So emotional literacy is being able to recognize difficult emotions and nice emotions as well in yourself, and knowing what to do about them. So I'm getting angry now. I recognize this feeling. My fists are clenched. My teeth are gritted. I'm starting to feel angry. I'm going to do something that I might regret. What shall I do instead? So recognizing your emotions and knowing what to do about them. And emotional literacy also includes recognizing those emotions in others and knowing how to respond to those. And I think we ask quite a lot of children, don't we? Because we ask them not to have these emotional meltdowns, and we ask them to be able to recognize their emotions at all times and deal with them in helpful ways. And lots of adults can't do that. So, you know, it's a big ask. And if you've got a child that has outgrown the toddler tantrum stage and is still having these difficulties with difficult emotions, then it's time to, you know, start giving that child some extra support around those difficulties. And if they get it when they're young, you know, it's only going to help. Often what happens is they don't get that help or support either from, you know, services or parents or whatever, and then they turn into angry teenagers, and then they might turn into angry adults, and then they can, you know, either take their anger out on other people or, you know, worst case scenario, turn to drugs and alcohol, whatever. Yeah, so starting when they're very young is important.
So are there any, you mentioned sort of teaching them how to calm down, perhaps if they're angry. Do you have any sort of techniques that you could share with us, perhaps, about?
So I think the most important thing that you can teach your child to do is to basically take 5. You know, or well, before that, actually recognise that they're getting angry, name it to tame it. So you'd need to have a chat, and you could use my poems, couldn't you? Because I'm sure there's poems about anger, to talk about what it feels like when you're angry, and that feeling is anger. And when you next feel that feeling, name it. Say to yourself, I'm feeling angry. And this is totally relevant for adults as well. So say an adult goes into a situation, their kids have done something terrible and it's made the parent feel really angry. If you, at that moment, if you say to yourself, I'm feeling angry, I recognize this feeling, that's the first step. And then you take 5. So you take yourself away from the situation. You might still be angry. Deep breathing is the next thing, you know, calm breathing. So think of that adult again, you know, they've stumbled upon something that the kids have done that's made them angry. They don't want to yell at their kids or do something that they might regret later. They name it to tame it. I'm feeling angry. I need to do something about this. Step outside, start breathing. I'm feeling angry. I need to breathe. I need to calm. I need to relax. And with children, it can often be physical activity as well. So you can either ask them to take 5 and take long, slow breaths, because that sort of regulates everything again. Or you can ask them to run around the garden or do star jumps, something that sort of gets them out of the angry situation. Because when we're very, very angry or we're very, very anxious, we're all in our head. We're completely in our head. And if we can get back into contact with our bodies, either by deep, slow breathing or by doing something active, like jump on the trampoline or run around the garden, we can get back in touch with our bodies, and then we can get some sort of sense of equilibrium again. It depends on the individual child, obviously, what might be the best thing to do.
I think that's quite good advice for adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we often forget that children they're humans, and we're humans. They're just littler than us. So yeah, things that work for adults with regard to difficult emotions work for children as well, and vice versa.
It does come back to what you were saying about what we expect of children as well, though. So you said, we expect an awful lot from them. And what you laid out just there was actually a process for how to go about addressing anger. But I mean, I would imagine it's the extreme minority of children who have been taught that process of how to tackle anger. And yet we expect them not to be angry or to manifest their anger. So I think that's great.
Yeah, completely. And what most people don't know, including parents, including myself, when I had young children, is that the brain actually takes 20 years to be fully developed. And it's the logical part of the brain that is the last bit to be fully developed. So, when a child is having a complete meltdown because their biscuit is broken, to us, that looks nonsensical, doesn't it? It's not logical, because our brain approaches it with our adult brain, which is fully developed. But a child's brain is much more of an emotional brain. And parents get so exasperated, don't they, when that every single week a parent will say to me, I'll say, what triggers the difficult behavior? And they go, it can be the smallest thing. And the parent just really doesn't understand, the smallest thing triggers a big reaction in children, and that's completely normal.
Well, the reason I find that particularly comical, and sorry to cut you off, Jake, was because my example was a baby bell. So I don't know how long it's been since you had a baby bell, but basically I opened up the baby bell, and in opening up the baby bell, it broke in half, and I didn't think anything to it. And I gave it to, I think it was my oldest one, and it was just like the worst thing in the world. It was complete tears and, so upset. I wouldn't say it was anger, but like, oh my goodness, distress. My baby bell is broken in half, and this is the worst thing ever. And
that's genuine distress.
Looking back on it, I can look at it as comical, but
and you'll probably tell that story at her 21st party or something.
No wedding day.
Yeah. It's perfectly normal behaviour for young children. Perfectly normal.
Jake,
which a lot of parents don't realise.
No, it rings a bell. I was just thinking about something you said earlier on, which is that it's that their brain is developing, and of course, when they get to the teenage years, the sort of more emotional side and the balance, if you like, between the emotional side and the logical part of the brain, which you said is the bit that develops the slowest or the latest, and then add into that all of the hormonal changes that you go through in your teenage years. It's a sort of a recipe for interesting times, let's just say.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean,
it makes a lot of sense.
I think the teenage brain has been compared to the toddler brain. I don't know too much about brain development, but if I had time, I would love to study it. But I did read something a while ago that said there is huge amounts of change and growth and development going on in the teenage brain as in the toddler brain. And I think expectations, can I just talk about expectations? So
yeah, please do.
Of really young children, like 2 and 3 year olds, we don't necessarily have particularly high expectations because we expect that emotional behaviour. But then when they get to the teenage years, we definitely don't expect them to behave like a toddler again, do we? Because a lot of parents anyway, because they're nearly adults. But actually, you just said it, there's all that brain development going on, and there's, the hormones and, the stuff around their peers and all sorts of other pressures, social media and exams and everything. And then we expect, better, for want of a better word, behaviour from teenagers than we do from toddlers, because we don't necessarily understand what's going on for them. And I think it's not helped by the fact that some parents just have easy kids. You might compare yourself to other parents that whether it's the 2-year-old or the 14-year-old, and they don't have any problem with their children. Some kids are just easy and laid back, and so when you've got a teenager that's melting down over the slightest thing, and your friend's teenager is absolutely fine about that thing, remember what's going on in their brain, and also all the pressures that are going on for them from outside.
Mine are very different, one from the other. They get on very well together for the most part, but there's definitely sibling rivalry that goes on, and this fairness. There needs to always be, if something good has happened to one of the children, then something equally good must also happen to the other. And if something bad has happened to one, then the other should also have something bad happen to them too. So it's that kind of,
and
that kind of thing.
They're vying for your attention, aren't they? And that's if like you say, if somebody's had something bad happen to them, then they'll see the parent being really sympathetic and etc. So that means the other one that hasn't had anything bad happen to them feels sort of cut out. And I think it's I'm thinking of when mine were teens. They're teenagers, aren't they? They're young adults, but there's a part of them that is still a child, especially like 13 and 15. I think because mine are in their 20s now, and I can totally relate to what you're saying, totally. And when did that stop? That didn't really stop until they were into their 20s, actually, which makes sense because the brain is not fully developed until 20. So that makes sense. So I think it's always important to remember that for the parents of older children, that there is still that younger child still inside them, and their brain is not fully developed, and yet we demand a lot of them, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Have you got anything?
School pressures too. Sorry, Jake. I was just saying.
Have you got anything that you think would be valuable to the audience that we haven't mentioned today?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, like tons of stuff. Let's talk about parents' needs, shall we? Yeah,
interesting.
And I'm gonna do that by I'm gonna read a poem to you about a grumpy parent. Okay, bear with 1 sec while I find it. So it's called The Day Something Got Broken, and it's from my book I'm Not Afraid of Spiders. So the day something got broken. Who broke that? Said Dad as he came in the door and saw the broken thing lying on the floor. He did, my sister said, immediately pointing an accusing finger at me. I didn't touch it, I stammered and stuttered. Yes, he did, my sister muttered. Well, let's say you both broke it, said Dad. What do you propose to do? You can't exactly stick it back together, can you? When Mum saw the broken thing, she said, oh, never mind. I didn't like it anyway. She's like that, sort of kind. Don't worry about Dad, she said. He's had a tiring day. Just give him time to calm down and clear that broken thing away. So parents are human as well. And parents have
I can relate
needs.
to that.
Yeah. And this is something that I say to parents in our first session together. They talk about their child's difficult behaviour, and we talk about children's needs. And then I ask them, could the difficult behaviour be linked to the adult needs? Do you know what I'm talking about? Shall I tell you what I'm talking about? Because it's a bit tricky until I give you this example. So you're a parent, you've had a really busy day, you're stressed, you've got a bit of a headache, you don't feel very well. You come home, you open the door, you walk into your house. What are your needs at that point? Your needs are what?
Cup of tea and a bit of calm.
Cup of tea and a bit of calm. But you've got children, okay? And your children immediately sense, they've got little antenna, they sense that you're not available for them. And what are they more likely to do, especially the younger children? They're then they're not likely to say, oh, mum, dad, we can see you've had a busy day, you look a bit tired, go and put your feet up, we'll make you a cup of tea and we'll play quietly until you feel better. So they're not likely to do that. They're more likely to play up. And why are they more likely to play up? Because you've become unavailable for them. You know, they perhaps haven't, if they're young, they haven't seen you all day, and you know how you have to walk into that house and leave your cares on the doorstep and be that Blue Peter presenter, but you can't always be. So they're more likely to play up. So therefore, in that particular situation, the children's difficult, in inverted commas, behaviour is related to the parents' needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Parent had needs that were not being met, and the children sense that. Children need your attention. So yeah. So that can happen like just on the odd instance like that. But sometimes I work with parents who are not having their needs met over a longer period of time. You know, they're having difficulties, stress at work, money worries, ill health in the family, or, you know, just general life, whatever it is. So often as parents, our needs don't get fully met. And if that goes on over a long period of time, quite often you can look at the child or the children and you can see a deterioration in their behaviour. So therefore, you know, when I give parents this list of children's needs, on that list, and it should actually be at the top of that list, is list of children's needs, blah, 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 for the parent to be okay, for you to be okay. Because if as a parent you are okay, then you're going to be able to meet all your child's needs. If you're not okay, because your own needs aren't being met, then things can go pear-shaped, because your children sense that you're not okay and you can't give to them, and then that comes out in their behaviour. Does that resonate at all? Does that make sense with you?
I think it's a profound point. Ongoing stress equates to ongoing, as you say, quote unquote, difficult behaviour. I think it's a really good one. I think it's quite profound to end on, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I just
and my
wanted
dog's
to say,
barking. I hope you can't hear too much of that. Someone's come to the door.
Yeah, it's your dog wants attention now. That's
yeah, they're like children too.
Where is the best place for people to find you?
Oh, okay. So my website is thecambridgeparentcoach.co.uk. So you can find out about my coaching program and my free workshop there. And the Cambridge Parent Coach you can also find on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for reminding me, because I probably wouldn't have remembered to do that bit.
It's all right. I really appreciate your time. I think it's been a great conversation, and I'm sure I can speak for Jake when I say that you're welcome back anytime, just because lovely. We like talking to you.
Yeah, I've got plenty more to say.
I do feel like more was. Sorry, what did you say, Jake?
The poems are great as well. I'd love to listen to some more of those, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
My children are a bit too old to fully appreciate them, I guess.
Yeah.
But right. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm ready and willing anytime. Just, you know, drop me a message. It'd be great.
Thank you again, and we will speak to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.